Welcome back to Helping Families Go Beyond, the podcast by Beyond the Spectrum. I'm your host, Loryn Carpenter, and we are so excited for a special Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month episode. It's April. We are so excited to be celebrating our community this month, and what better way to celebrate it than with an amazing conversation with Michael Pereira of the Autism Voyage. He is a financial planner and a family advocate for special needs families, and we just have an amazing conversation with him where we talk about some of the conversations that may need to happen as you're starting to plan financially, and that can be anything from special needs trusts to estate planning to insurance plans. And so he does a lot of great advising when it comes to picking insurance plans and making sure that they're specialized for the individual needs of families. And so it's a great conversation, and we're excited to have his guidance as a part of our podcast series. And before we get into it, just want to say that the Giving Challenge is finally happening this month. I know I've mentioned it in some of the past episodes, but it's finally happening this month, April 15th through 16th, noon to noon. We're so excited for it to be boosted by the Patterson Foundation, who will be matching unique donations from $25 to $100. And it's an amazing day to give, and we're so excited. I mean, I've mentioned it a few times, so I mean it. And it's completely virtual. It's a great day to give. We're looking forward to it. And just want to briefly mention our character trait of the month, which is altruism. And so that is caring about others and acting to help them. And so you can do that by supporting our Giving Challenge. And I also just wanted to give a shout out to our Hive group, our young adults, because they have started their own soda shop. And today I got the first sample of their drinks, and so they're making some amazing sodas, and our young adult group's doing some great vocational things. So shout out to our Hive. They're doing amazing. And I think that's all I have. So without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Michael and the Autism Voyage. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode, which is actually going to be released during Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month in April. So we're very excited to have this special episode on this special month. And we are just so happy to have you here, Michael. And if you could please just introduce yourself
Yeah,
and tell us a little bit about your experience with the Autism Voyage.
of course, of course. So, Lauren, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Michael Pereira, the founder of the Autism Voyage. I would say it's a blog slash awareness driven platform. We have over 180 articles right now, over 2,000 families in our newsletter. We also have our own directory. And we also have our own insurance planning practice. But essentially, it's a blog. Everything started after my son was diagnosed, even though we knew way before that he had something, but we were in denial. So we didn't, there could be some procrastination in early intervention. But around that time that we were in denial, we started looking for, we didn't want to talk to anybody. So we started looking for blogs. All the blogs we saw were more academic based, like a university doing a research about something specific, or nonprofits that at the end of the day didn't go too deep but wanted to donations and all that. So it came to a point that that was one part, and the other, when we started looking for our own financial planner or advisor or however you want to say it, everybody just wanted to sell us something or recruit us. So it became very frustrating too. Nobody really knew how to talk to us about how financial services or these products can feed off of estate planning, because everything has, not one professional will be able to solve everything a special needs family needs around planning. So just frustrated out of that, we created our own blog and our own insurance planning practice from that. Left corporate to do this.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. So it sounds like you guys really focus on kind of creating an entire support network with your group.
Yeah, yeah, we did. We're trying our best. We still have a lot to learn, but we're evolving.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's a lot that has to go into it. I know just from some of the stories our own parents have told us, just
Yeah,
all of the planning and all of the things that you have to think about that
yeah,
some families may not even realize.
yeah. It's tough. It's tough. There's a lot of
Yeah.
conversations there.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, what was that diagnosis process like for you? What were some of the signs that maybe kind of led you down that path of getting some
Yeah.
answers?
Yeah, I think the diagnosis was more on our side because again, we knew he he hit his head against the wall a lot, tiptoeing, flapping, nonverbal. All the symptoms you can imagine that it needs to be addressed. But I think where it really hit was in specifically myself, my ego, of now there's a curveball. Now, whatever I thought my American dream life would be, and even though he's very Christian is very high functioning, but at that time, we didn't know anything because it was so uncertain that uncertainty obviously hits at my point the ego or the denial or everything, and my wife as well. So the diagnosis really was more on where it hit the most was on our belief system, I would say. But after the diagnosis, I would say that there was a huge relief because now we're in acceptance phase. Now he has it, it's formal. What do we do now? And I think that you know, f- shift changes a lot of things, even in the environment and everything, because now you're more open to understand, okay, what's from here? What does it look like? So I can say the diagnosis for us now after several years, obviously in the acceptance and growing phase, I my definition of denial is how selfish I was because I was only thinking about how it changed our life, how it affected us, our career, and everything. And it shouldn't be that way. At the end of the day, for us, it's a true blessing. Christian has progressed a lot. Amanda as well, our child. Amanda isn't diagnosed, but she has her own speech delays. And at the end of the day, I can tell you that for those parents who are going through their own denial phase, just be open and it's for us. I can just say it's been a pure blessing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that's a wonderful testament to that. I know we kind of feel that way in my family with my brother Scotty. I know that my parents kind of went through a diagnosis process that was pretty similar, where there was kind of some denial at first and some confusion, not knowing what steps to take next. And then once they were starting to get the support for Scotty, it all started to kind of makes sense, and, we always say it's just taught us so much patience and so much perseverance, and so I think it's definitely, just something that happens and, I think can make a huge impact on the way we see the world and the way that we deal with things. I know we have to have entirely different conversations than most
Yeah.
other typical families,
Oh
so
yeah, and I would say also around that phase and in that change of everything, a mindset and all that, our circle became smaller, I would say. You know, y- and it, nothing wrong for because of that, because everybody has their own, but it became smaller, and I think that also we changed the way we would apply information that we would hear from close family members, not because we would hear, hey, just an opinion, and we would apply it, but does not necessarily would be what we needed, right? So there could be a parent that, from a very good intention, or a grandparent or whoever, from a very good standpoint and intention with love, would provide you an opinion, but it doesn't mean that they not have the experience or everything they need to be able to actually help you in that sense. So also that those two things, our circle became smaller, and that's fine.
mhm.
And to also watch out who we listen to.
Definitely. I've always said that having a brother with autism is a great litmus test for kind of creating your people and creating your friend groups and your social groups because it keeps all the accepting and the open-minded and loving and understanding people around you, and it definitely it does make your circle smaller though, and but it shows you who the real people are, which I think is a blessing in and of itself. So yeah, yeah, and I know some other conversations that some families in our community might have to have involve finances and planning just to take it in a different direction, but, so I wanted to open it up with kind of a broad question. So what sorts of financial conversations should families be having if they're planning with a special needs child?
Yeah. So when we talk about financial, I'm not a financial planner because I do not do investments or handle assets under management. My pure offer is more about around insurance planning. And the reason why is because I believe that before planning 20, 25 years from now, you got to make sure that today you're secure today, right? Because if I'm committing to a plan, which happened that this is one of the things that happened to me every time we talk to a financial planner. Hey, how do you see yourself in 20 years or 50 with a pina colada and a beach? No, that doesn't happen. What I'm concerned if I get cancer today and I'm sick, but Christian still needs therapy. My wife still needs, what should I do? And the thing that a lot of families don't think about is if you're committing to a 20, 25 year plan, which is good, but if something happens to you and you don't have a foundation, that commitment will get interrupted. Whatever you're doing will be interrupted because you might not be able to continue doing those investments. You might not have to sell your house. You might have to sell your house or look in your savings and whatnot. So my main thing is around insurance is because I believe that families in the special needs community should focus on building a foundation. And these conversations are hard. Not a lot of families know, you just know what you know. And when it comes to insurance, sometimes it's viewed as a commodity and not, as a way of talking about possible two generational plan, right? So, I would say that just being open first, and secondly, by having these conversations doesn't mean you need to commit to a plan, right? By having these conversations, you need to look at it as you're gaining clarity on things you don't know. And based on that, then you can make a decision. But what I think it's about gaining clarity first before you're making a decision.
Yeah, definitely, and I know that's something a lot of our families will come to us with is, "What are things gonna look like in 20 years, in 25 years? What if I'm not here?" And like you mentioned, we have to think about today too. And so I know insurance can be confusing for families who are already managing that kind of care through the day-to-day therapies and all the things that they have to go through. And so, what types of insurance would you say are the most critical for special needs families, or what kinds of plans would benefit them the most?
Yeah, I think it's not about. So what I've seen is that it's not much about the product. It's about what we're trying to solve. So and I'm going to give you an example. So, and again, those plans for 20, 25 years they're good. They have their space, but we're building now about building a foundation because if you're the head of household and something happens to you, you want to make sure that you're secured. So it's not about product. I think it's more about what we're trying to solve. And again, so for example, if I am a parent and let's use myself as an example. If Christian depends on me 100% and I get cancer, I get a stroke, I get into injury, what's the first thing that's going to happen? My income may be interrupted because I'm not being able to work. So my most important asset is my ability to produce income. So if I'm injured, I have an illness and I'm not able to work, my income will get interrupted. So the first thing we usually see is we build an income protection strategy. Either we get a policy that pays out living benefits or we talk about disability income insurance, but we want to make sure that that income is there. Some way somehow because you want the parent to concentrate on recuperating and not how they're going to pay the house. So that's first. Secondly, what we also look is we work a lot with estate planners when they're doing their special needs trust or any trust, anything around trust planning. Why? A lot of families, I would say, don't have many assets. So what we do is we use life insurance as a funding mechanism for the special needs trust. So you can use property, you can use a brokerage account, savings, but for me as a father, that fluctuates. Life insurance, as long as you pay the premium, you know what, it's very predictable, right? So using that as a funding mechanism for a special needs trust, that's essential. And I would say the third one, which is planning for the future, is something around which is very important and not often talked about, is long-term care for the parent. Because again, let's say Christian now is 47, 50, and now he still needs support. But now I'm 80, 85, and I need help. Assisted living facilities, nursing homes are becoming very expensive. So we want to build a policy or any other, coverage or annuity that considers a long-term care rider, just so it can cover those costs that will become. It already is expensive, but it will become even more later on during those years. So those are three things they can solve. But with life insurance, you can solve a lot of different things. So I just wanted to share
Yeah.
with you the primary three I would say we use.
Yeah, those are great. Those are great, and that is something that families should focus on is as they have to start considering their own care. And
Yeah.
I know that's that can get kind of complicated too when in some instances where maybe a grandparent is caring for a child,
Mhm.
or
The
if
the
another
sibling?
family member is taking care of the child. I know that can also be a good reason to start thinking about those things sooner
Yeah.
rather than later too.
100%. And we see
Yeah,
it a lot.
we definitely yeah, we see that a lot, and so I know that can happen, and that can, that's, definitely something that families can start planning for when they're in that situation. And so, I know, you mentioned special needs trusts, and so can you kind of give maybe an overview of what a special needs trust is and how, families can kind of start to plan if they're creating one of those for their future?
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer, so anybody who's
Yeah.
listening, if you do have any questions about around estate planning, special needs trust, guardianship, power of attorneys, I highly suggest seek a professional help from a lawyer. But what I can tell you is that it's a way of protecting the government, whatever type of benefits that child or adult with support needs has. So any asset would go towards the special needs trust, not under the name of that adult that requires, because we want to make sure what it makes sure is that any help, whatever government help that individual has, will not get affected because we want to make sure that you're under the income limits, and if you inherit something that obviously would jeopardize that, we don't want that. So that's why we coordinate very well with attorneys to be able to use life insurance to fund it. And we save, whatever benefits SSI or whatever that individual has, we try to avoid any impact through the trust.
Okay, wonderful. And, do you have any, attorneys that you recommend, or are they in your directory on your
We
website?
have some in the directory, but we work with a lot nationwide. Um,
Okay.
So it doesn't matter. And if we don't even have a contact, we can find it through our own network. But it's always good to have these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But that's great. So we can keep that in mind for our families for sure.
Yeah.
And so when a family, if they're going through this process, if they're, starting the financial planning, if they're getting some insurance policies put in place, what kinds of forms or records or paperwork do you think they should have prepared or have on hand if they
Mm,
need to get approved for anything?
yeah. Well, I would start even before. So there's something, if I may,
Yeah.
uh, there's something called a letter of intent, which anybody can create. It has no cost. I can leave you my link here so anybody can download it. It's basically a document that if I would start in this journey, I would start with this document. Why? Because this document outlines everything around the child's profile, child or adult. It can outline routines, allergies, behavior triggers, therapist information, physician information, financial factors, everything around, even for example, if and the reason why this document is so important, let's say if I myself, my mom, she's the best grandmother there is. She's the best cook. She cooks amazing, but she cannot take care physically of Christian. So let's say if something were to happen to me and Ellie, my wife, and we would get into a car crash. Let's say we're 5 days in the hospital. If somebody would need to take care of Christian, a family member, they need to understand that he's allergic to peanut. They need to understand that when you turn on the blender in the kitchen, there's a very high possibility of a meltdown because of sensory issues. If they don't know that, it's going to be very rough. That document outlines everything. So, so having that document, I think it's essential for any family with special needs. Now, afterwards, if they were talking about insurance and they were talking about all that, I think first we need to go through and understand what do they have today. So for example, if they're employed, usually employers have employer benefits. We want to make sure what they have today and how can we complement those employer benefits for now. If they're in a small business and they may not have anything, we want to make sure, okay, what are we trying to solve? Are we trying to solve an income replacement issue? Do we want to solve a debt coverage issue? Maybe, for example, I've had families inquire that they do have a child that's neurotypical and they have another child who's neurodivergent, but now they want to use, for example, a strategy for the neurotypical because they're so young to buy a policy and then because they want to use it for college planning later on. You know, maybe the neurodivergent may not be able to qualify, but it's around building a strategy for everybody. So it really depends on what do we want to solve. But regardless, insurance, the longer you wait, I would say, the more probability of having higher cost and not being able to qualify because as time passes by, it may be you may have health issues or whatnot. It may be more complicated to qualify.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I know that's such an important thing to have and it's just such an important thing to plan. So I think it's great that, we're having this conversation and, really emphasizing the importance of just planning and, making sure that we're covered and that we've got everything as because who knows what could happen. And I know it's a scary thing for our families to think about too, is the
Yeah.
unexpected. So
Yeah.
just being prepared is all we can do really,
Yeah.
so
And also, I
yeah.
would say something that's very important is that, you know, as a life insurance agent, for example, I'm not going to be able to solve everything like I mentioned for the family. There's a lot of things and what I do believe is that we as professionals need to get connected with other professionals when serving a family. So for example, something that I do see a lot is that families treat every professional in silos. So they talk to me as a life insurance agent, they talk to a lawyer, they talk to a wealth manager, for example, if they have any assets, they're a CPA, but none of the professionals are talking to each other. And I think that at one point, as a parent, instead of seeing everything in silos or separately, you should become a quarterback. Like connecting the dots, connecting the professionals, and make sure that those professionals are having the conversations they need to have to be as you know looking for a better way to serve you as a family, right? So I think that having that mindset of becoming a quarterback, having the mindset that even though social media sometimes you can perceive that one profession can solve everything, no, that's not correct. I would say that. And also, a couple misconceptions, life insurance is not an investment. There's a lot of things that I see that, there's a lot of promotion around that, and it doesn't solve any tax obligations either. So I see social media sometimes puts out a lot of content, but it doesn't mean it's true.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. Yep, yeah. I know social media can definitely exaggerate some things. I know we see videos about autism all the time in the front office, and we're like, "Ah, that is so fake." So, we definitely understand. So, yeah, that's great. But so I think it's wonderful that, having a family create kind of like a circle of support. I know we had a conversation before this recording actually where we kind of talked about creating a network of support so that all providers and all caregivers are kind of in the loop and can understand what's happening. And so I know that can kind of seem maybe overwhelming to families if they're trying to get all of these people connected. And so, how do you think families can best start to create that circle? How can they, get those providers together and
Yeah.
make it more holistic?
I would say, at one point we as parents, and you're a sister of a brother that requires support. At some point, we develop these skills of being curious. Develop these skills of you know understanding who's real professional doing it for the right reasons, who's not. And I think that as you go with along and you start evolving from that point of view, you're gonna get better connecting one professional to another because it only benefits you and the family. And I work with a lot of different family dynamics. So we see a lot of divorced parents. The divorce rate is very high, unfortunately. We see a lot of blended families, which that type of conversation is very complex because everybody wants to secure their biological children, but at the same time they need to unite. And we see a lot of single parents. We see a lot of different things. And I believe, that at one point you need to connect those professionals because they are doing this day in, day out, and just make sure that you can start becoming that quarterback, like I mentioned, because it's very important. And when you start seeing results, and see how professionals come up with new ideas, around your situation, you're going to see how beneficial it is to start connecting each professional with that main motive, the best interest of the family.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we see here at our school is we have lots of different therapy providers on top of our education services, and so that can be a lot for some of our families, but I've seen that in action, and it's really amazing to see all these different kinds of therapists coming together and all to champion one student, and it's so important because it gets everybody on that same page, and it
Yeah,
it helps
100%.
everyone understand what's happening, and it helps them get to know the family better too. And so and I think it's really good for the family too because it puts them at ease, and it can kind of let them know, "Here's all the support that you have, and they're working together for you." I think we had a family meet last week, and I wanna say there were 8 or 9 of our professionals in on the meeting. And so it's just such a heartwarming thing when you think about how all of them are focused on one success, one outcome, and
Mhm.
so it's
Yeah.
wonderful, it's so important.
Plus, I also, as a father, I can tell you that a lot of the skills CEOs have, we as parents develop them. You know, when you start multitasking, when you start fighting on behalf of somebody who doesn't have a voice right now, um, being persistent, consistent, that maybe all those skills you didn't even apply in your life, but after you got a child that requires so much support, you start building this skill set that you become your own CEO of your family. I just feel that if you apply these skills into these type of conversations and you start, delegating better, you start understanding concepts better, you start understanding opportunities, areas of opportunity, you're becoming that CEO, and it was forced, right? Because you're forced to develop these type of skills, which CEOs already have. So a lot of parents don't see it that way, but I see a mom that can juggle insurance claims, taking a child to therapy, handling a fight at home, an argument, um, you know, not taking personal any type of judgment from family, friends, or society. They develop this hard skin that, when you think about it, this should be natural at one point for any parent to start having that mindset of becoming a quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. I know, it just becomes so natural to become an advocate.
Correct.
Once you start on that journey, you just naturally you just start to advocate in ways that maybe you haven't, like you mentioned, that you haven't even for yourself before. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I would also just add in there that what I would suggest, if I may, and parents too, even though we're talking about connecting professionals and we're talking about, that shift of mindset and skill set. Also, I would say that one of the mistakes I see is that there are parents that have this do it yourself approach. You know, I see that with software. I see offers on online that say, "Hey, do it yourself," and so forth. And you cannot apply that in special needs. So what I see is that there's a lot of parents that go in online, buying their own life insurance online, and when you really review it, it's super expensive. Maybe it doesn't apply you know, because they don't talk to a professional who does this day in out. So the same thing for buying they go online, they go to a company who offers trust and they build their own trust and it's not a special needs trust. So, I would highly suggest for those parents to, you know, not have that mentality because when there's a complex matter, you cannot solve it with a one size fits all service. That's one of the things I would say I see a lot, and at the end of the day, it costs more when you try to fix it later on.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think, and with how specific some family situations can
Oh yeah.
be, I can see where a professional would need to step in and help
Yeah.
guide them because I mean, just the range of situations that we've seen families in, it can vary so much. So having that professional guidance is so important. And who have you worked with that has maybe benefited from planning ahead? And what would you say some of your favorite success stories are of people that you've
Yeah.
worked with?
There's a couple, but I think the most I love every family that comes in, and each situation is so different, and I just love being able to guide any family, and also I learn as well. But I would say the use cases I really thrive on are the ones I work with other professionals. Like for example, if we provide the policy but see actually that it's being executed and being placed as in a plan of their estate plan, and you can see how they think about using what I provided into their own family plan and seeing executed because I do see that there's a trend of there's families creating trust, but they're not funded, or they buy a policy, but they don't consider possibly, as an example, let's say if I buy a policy online and I only think about funding the trust, that may not be the best practice because, for example, if something were to happen to me and my wife, and now a guardian needs to come in and assume responsibility for my child, I want to make sure that guardian has an income because let's say if they need to assume responsibility, leave their job to be able to become a caregiver, they need income. So that's the type of conversations we have. But I would say those families that from point A, and I can see how they evolve and create the full plan beyond my offering. They connect with a lawyer. They are able to create a trust, create a full plan for the full family, and I'm able to talk to them every 3 months, every 6 months, because that's something that we do. We meet with our families all the time. We're always on top of that. Even though if there's no update, we'd like to meet with them. When you see that, oh my God, it's beautiful because you can see that they initiated a conversation because they were scared, they were uncertain, they were not they didn't procrastinate, they were paralyzed, they didn't know where to start. Now to a point that they have everything in place, we are having several conversations throughout the year. They evolve and we evolve with them. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And to go from that place of not knowing where to turn and not knowing what the answers are to feeling confident and feeling empowered in the care of your child and knowing that you're doing all the right things and you're doing the best that you can. It's amazing to see. So it's wonderful to watch, even with our own families here, to watch that happen. Just from some of the phone calls we get, we'll have families still call us in tears not knowing, what to do or the steps to take. And then if they join us or if their student becomes, one of our program members, then we start to see over the years just how they become more confident and they feel better about advocating and they're more sure. And I know something that I wanted to mention earlier is that I think when you have a special needs child or a family member, I think it teaches you discernment really well.
Huh,
And
100%
so I
true.
think it teaches you discernment and it kind of helps you even like beyond people, but in everything in your life, you become almost like intuitive with how you make decisions and who you allow into your life. I think you just start to really see things on another perspective, on
A
another level.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and my wife and myself, we've been able to develop that skill set slowly, but getting there. But I guess it's hard, at the end of the day, when you have so much things in your mind and you're trying to juggle so many things, it's hard, but 100% that's one of the skill sets that I believe that should be there as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And if you have maybe a family that's, looking for plans or if they're looking for any kinds of providers for their planning, what would you say some red flags would be? Would there be any sorts of um, maybe like warning signs that they're not a good provider, or is there anything they should be cautious about as they start to plan?
I think that don't you know don't listen to your friend who works in any other place than this. It's like a professional. You want to make sure that that professional who you approach does this is specifically this I would say community helps this community special needs. Because if they're only focused on, I don't know, just real estate investors, or they're focused on helping, it becomes very difficult because the type of conversation that goes in here is a type of conversation that I would say is scenario based. And the reason why I'm gonna mention this is Christian right now is in my example, he's 7. Amanda's 4. I don't know if he might be able to make a decision by himself when he's 18, 20, 24, 30. But regardless, whatever age he has, I need to plan for different type of scenarios. I need to plan, for example, Amanda is a if required or will she become a guardian? I don't know. But we need to talk about it. Does my mom at one point or my mother-in-law need to jump in case I don't know. It might be, right? Or would I need to at one point put Chris in a homeschool? Who's going to be here with him? I don't know. So I would say this type of planning requires a lot of different scenario based conversations because we don't know what will happen. You know, hopefully at one point he's at 18, he can independent, be able to make a decision, do everything because we're working on that. We're trying to be that support system he needs in order to be independent. But there's no guarantee. And that's where I think that going to professionals who have these kind of conversations day in day out is so important. So I would say for those who are starting and something to watch out for, just make sure that whoever you approach understands the ins and outs of this community.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And with as unique as our situations can be, it's important that they can be flexible and know all the different possibilities
And
because
also,
like you said.
yeah, yeah, and also include, for example, I'm seeing this is that, for example, if grandparents are very essential in families with special needs, but
Mhm.
sometimes they're not included in estate planning conversations. So that's something that you're also going to watch out for what type of professional to approach. Also try to include as many as the family members who today support you into those conversations
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
because they
Definitely.
also have a say.
They do, yes, definitely. And I've seen that here at BTS, just the entire family that supports the student, and you have parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts that
Yeah.
rally around them, and
So make
it's
sure
wonderful.
if there are support system today for some areas, I believe that at one point if you feel possible and beneficial, include them in these hard conversations, right? Obviously, as you can, and if suitable. But I think it's something that any parent should consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. If you could offer one piece of advice to families who are navigating a new diagnosis, or if they're, just stepping into the world of special needs financial estate,
Hmm.
insurance planning, what would that piece of advice be?
Hmm. So, if you feel anxious, if you feel uncertain, if you feel you're in the right place, you know, that's exactly what you should be feeling. And that's why I think it's having these conversations, but just don't feel that you're alone. These are completely normal, I would say, ways of feeling because you are in an uncertain I would say position. You only know what you know, and it's scary, but it's completely normal. And I think that by saying that, you should receive you should have some sort of relief that, there are professionals who cater to this community, and usually those professionals have their own personal experience in this journey, I would say. So I would say that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I think so many of our families will benefit from this conversation just because of all the things that they do have to think about, from being a parent to being an advocate to being a planner and having to wear all of these hats and consider all of these different things.
And
It's
and
Mhm.
what I mentioned earlier about building a foundation, that's my point of view. That's what we do today. But I would say there's no, and I've seen this on social media. There's no like wrong vehicle, wrong product, or wrong approach from a financial planning perspective. It's about what suits you based on your family dynamic. In my case, I saw insurance because I couldn't think 25 years, even though at one point I should have when I started, but my concern was today because, that's the most important, and that's my approach when I provide my offering. But what I'm trying to say is that it's just about your family dynamic. There's no wrong approach. There's no wrong. It's about and you finding the benefit of that type of approach, right? Just
Yeah.
want to say that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. With yeah, like I've mentioned, with as unique as the situations can be, it's just so important to have that
Oh yeah.
communication and to create those communities, and creating that support team is so important. And I just appreciate all of the information that you've shared about creating that support and
Yeah.
reassuring families that there's assistance out there and there are professionals that can help
Yeah.
and that know the ins and outs and that are, willing to help find the best possible coverage and planning, that while also considering the things that are happening in the moment and
Mhm.
today. And so, I know that's a lot for our families to think about, and we just appreciate you willing to help and creating that security for families. I know that's just so needed and it's not talked about enough. So, yeah.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
No, but thank you so much. And before I leave, I wanted to, if
Yeah.
I could share a quote that helped me.
Sure.
There's s- IBM had a CEO that was called, or is, she hasn't passed away, but Ginny Rometty, and she has a quote that says, "Growth and comfort cannot coexist." I think it's very important because this is exactly how we should see this. If you want to have growth, don't expect to be comfortable.
Mhm.
Now, but if you want to be comfortable, don't expect growth because it doesn't coexist. So I just want to share that.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love that quote because it's so true. I think when we step outside of our comfort zone and when we have those conversations about finances and future planning and creating those support networks, that's where we see the real success and we see real things happening and evolving for
Yeah.
families. And so, how can families get connected with you if they'd
Yeah.
like to learn more?
Yeah, it's www.autismvoyage.com. There you're going to see you can subscribe to my newsletter, you can see our directory, you can book a meeting with us. We are planning to launch like a separate page for the services only because at the end of the day the blog is just more on the personal side. It's not a service provider, it's just providing as much awareness as possible, but we should be launching our own, basically website for the services itself.
Okay, wonderful. I think that'll be great for our families to know.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. It's such an amazing episode for Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. And I think this information is going to be so helpful for our families. So
No, no,
we're
thank
just so
you.
appreciative to have your time just talking about planning and parenthood and all the wonderful, crazy, and sometimes overwhelming things that come along with raising a family and getting all that planning. I
Yeah.
think it's just such an important conversation to have. So we appreciate you.
No, no, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us here today at Helping Families Go Beyond, the podcast by Beyond the Spectrum. For more resources or information, visit our website at beyondthespectrum.org.